In life, we are on a constant pursuit for our slice of the pie. The pie comes in many forms, whether it's starting a business, higher education, pursuing a career, raising a family, and the list continues. The burdens we face during our pursuit is lessened when we are financially fit. The Breadwinners created a platform where we can discuss finances and entrepreneurship in a judgment free space. We're striving to encourage healthy financial discussions amongst our peers to capture our slice until we no longer want a slice and would rather bake our own cake.
My father, really good man, he said, he told all of us, I'm the youngest of six, and he says there's two important days in life, the day you were born and the day you find your purpose. And I like to combine that with finding my passion. And it's like chasing our dreams and chasing our slice. So when it comes to you, what is your slice of the pie?
That's a great question. My slice of the pie, Jason, would be emphatically what I'm doing now.
Okay.
So, helping folks build wealth through home ownership because it has a residual effect, right? So we want to, educate, uplift communities through home ownership, and the residual effect is all the things that I learned, I can pass that on, and then you can pass that on to your generation, and so on and so forth. Because that was some things that that I really missed out on as a young man. My parents didn't teach us anything about credit. They told us how to have character and integrity and pay your bills on time, but that wasn't the game. You had to know more things in order to get more things. So the older I, became, then I started learning that stuff, and now I can pass that along to everybody else. So that would be my slice of the pie.
Man, well put. Well put. So, Samir Rashed, tell the world who you are and your business.
All right. Well, I'm Samir Rashed. I'm the broker owner and originator from Crefco Financial Group. And like I mentioned previously, we try to help folks build wealth through home ownership. So we do a lot of educating and teaching. And just a short story. When I was buying my home many years ago, I was about 22 when we bought our first house. And the loan officer or the loan originator left us confused, scared, didn't know if we were going to, take on this journey because it's the biggest purchase that you'll ever make in your life, right? And being so nervous, it led us to say, hey, my wife and I got in the car after we were signing some preliminary papers, and I said, hey, I'm thinking about something. And she was like, tell me, please tell me. I think I can do that. And she's like, that's exactly what I was thinking. That's you. and that's really how we got into the business. But I'm sure we'll touch on that sometime during the segment.
That is so amazing.
Yeah.
And how long have you been in business?
Well, it'll be 14 years in March, but I've been a originator for 24 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
All 24 years in Cleveland, or?
Yeah, all 24 in Cleveland. We're originally from Detroit.
Okay.
So I'm not a Bucks fan, but I do like the Browns.
So, no, you gotta go with the Lions. You gotta keep the Lions.
But we're originally from Michigan, and then we had a short stint in Illinois for about a year and a half, and then we came to Ohio, and then Ohio kind of led me into this profession.
That's an amazing story. It certainly is, because of, it's how life works.
Yeah.
Right. And it's sometimes you find your passion directly through things that you're pursuing, and sometimes it finds you.
That's a good point.
And it's, for me, that's the story was similar how my passion in finance found me. But you said something that was really profound. You said building wealth through home ownership.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. So let's start with this question. Is a home an asset or a liability?
I would say a home is a asset, and in the short term, it's still a liability because you're paying, that monthly debt. But in the long term, if we're thinking long term, then a house is going to be an asset. And here's the reason why. If we're doing simple math, when you're renting, let's assume you're paying about $700 in rent per month. Let's say you have a 12-month lease. You're going to take that $700 times 12 months. If my math is correct, I believe that's $8,400. So you're paying about $8,400 for the year, and that would be a liability because you're not. What are you gaining from paying your rent, right? In your mortgage, in the mortgage world, when you're paying, let's say $700, a portion of that is going towards interest, or a lot of it for the first, 15 years of your mortgage, and another portion of that is going towards your principal. So when that's going towards your principal, that's your money. So now you're paying down this balance, and at the same time, you're getting equity. You're getting that equity that you can use. So to answer your question, yes, definitively, a home is definitely an asset.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm not going to lie. I have petty moments online, and I argue with people. I don't know why. I argue with people about this, and I just had to stop just for my own sanity.
Yeah.
It's just trying to explain to people that, one, wealth is built through long term.
Sure.
It's nothing that happens overnight.
Sure.
But two, when it comes to your home, equity is so important because if you're just renting, then the person, the landlord or the homeowner, whatever you want to call them, is the one that's making all the money.
Sure, absolutely.
So from that perspective, you should get a piece of land, especially if you want to build any type of wealth and pass anything along, because that land is yours.
Yeah,
if you take care of it.
That's a phenomenal point. And my grandparents had a lot of investment properties, and we were really young, maybe 8, 9 years old, and our grandparents would have us come over to some of the properties. We would be doing the lawn work and pulling up weeds, and we didn't like that very much, obviously, but they were trying to teach us something. So that was always embedded, in our minds, property, because you saw your grandparents, doing some of that stuff. So a lot of folks could be the first ones, right? You could be the first one. Now you're going to pass on those messages, to your kids, and then they'll pass that along, as well. And my grandparents never spoke to us about that, but you could see it. And now when you become a man and you get older, you understand the lessons that they were teaching you at such an early age.
I'm hoping my son says the same thing when he gets older, because right now I just want to punch him upside the head.
How old is he?
17.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And 4.
Yeah, so you're in that sweet spot and, pulling your hair out part.
Yeah, I'm the cool dad and the corny dad at the same time.
Right.
I've never thought I'd be that guy, but I certainly am. But, it's crazy when you think about like home values and all that stuff. I mean, like present day, what's going on?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. I get that every day these days, because now we're having a triple threat. That's what we call it. You have a rising rate environment with a home appreciation, and the homes are appreciating with such rapidity, folks can't even, keep up. And then you have that third that makes up the trifecta is going to be the inventory. So there's not a lot of inventory out. Man. So, one of my favorite subjects was economics. So supply and demand, right? So if the demand is up for something and the supply is low, that brings up, the housing prices. But another interesting tidbit though, so for renters, in the United States, rents are rising by 12%. And then if you're renting right now and you're going to renew your lease, your landlord is going to increase your rent by 5 to 8%. That's what we're seeing over the last 3 or 4 years. So purchasing a home is going to be advantageous in this market as it would be renting, because we did the analogy on, hey, here's rent. I'm pretty much throwing $8,400 out the window, and I'm not building any equity. So if your payment's going to be going up in your rent, you may as well put that money to work and go ahead and purchase a house, because you're essentially paying yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Equity is that thing,
Sure.
right? It's that money that's built into your home that essentially is going to be yours. Well, it is yours. And we're going to get into equity further down the conversation, but let's start with, I want to get your perspective on gentrification.
Okay.
I see it two different ways. I think gentrification it sucks, but then I also see like positive in gentrification. So for me is I love to see neighborhoods like we're in Tremont right now, and I love to see neighborhoods being revitalized, but I don't like to see, staples within that community being pushed out.
Sure.
And then other people are moving in, and it's a double-edged sword. So politically correct, you probably want to say you don't like gentrification, but to me there are some positives. But I wanted to get your opinion, your perspective of gentrification. Regardless of mine, I want to get yours.
No, that's a great question. I would say, for lack of a better word, it does suck in some cases, but I believe the way that we avoid all of that is through education. So the more knowledge that you have about something, you want to be able to have the power to do whatever it is you want to do. So if you want to stay in your community, you have a voice now, and you have the knowledge, to do it. You can purchase a home in your area if you wanted to. You can go to the suburbs if you wanted to. But it all starts with, the knowledge and understanding why. Why is there gentrification in my area? What is it that I can do because I know my rights, and I have the knowledge to, purchase a home if I want to. So all of those things go hand in hand. But I do agree with your statement. Yeah, for lack of a better word, it does suck. But knowledge, brings power.
It certainly does, and it alleviates fear.
Sure.
As well through home ownership, because it's crazy. When I was growing up, I grew up in the inner city of Cleveland, East Side, and I used to see my friends that live across the street, down the street, around the corner. They'll be there for years, and then one day they'll just leave, and somebody else will move in without a for sale sign, and it leaves you scratching your head.
Sure.
But now, as an adult, I realized, they were just renting a home.
Exactly.
And for us, where we come from, especially in the 90s, was like so important. The neighborhoods you rep and all that stuff. And I just think about a Jay-Z line where he says, "Please don't die over the neighborhood that your mama's renting."
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, so profound, right?
Yeah, but and I can't remember the name of the song, but he had a lot of good messages in there, talking about he bought the Maybach and all the stuff he purchased. If he would have had that money, he would have bought some art. Now that art, he bought it for $1 million, now it's worth $2 million. So the same type of philosophy.
The exact same thing. That's the story of OJ. Like,
Right.
yeah, that 444 album shaped my company. The mindset. It's like he said, I bought every V12 engine. I wish I can take it back to the beginning. And for me, I'm a big shoe guy, right? Yeah. So at one point, oh my God, I had maybe 400 pairs of sneakers.
Really?
And it's like, dude, how many pairs of the same shoe, colors of the same shoe you're gonna buy? Yeah. And it didn't happen until, I'll say right around COVID, where COVID was a blessing, like for me, because it gave me the opportunity to stay at home with my kids. Okay. But I realized that I can't take the shoe collection and give it to my children. Yeah. But I can sell those shoes, in which I did.
That's a good point.
And I bought shares in Nike, in Apple, in Tesla, in Google, and I can give that to them. Yeah. If they don't put me in an old folks home, of course.
That's a good point, man. I believe that you really can't change anything that you're not aware of, right? Mm-hmm. So we've all made those mistakes. Even me, right? So, back in the day, like I said, my parents never taught me about, credit per se. They still told you to, pay your bills, be good character and all that, but it was more to it. But they could only explain to me what they were aware of. So taking some losses and understanding that, hey, and here's just one quick story. So the one failure that we had the most was in like cars, right? So you'll buy a car and you want what you want.
Of course.
Period. So it's like, oh, I love this car. This payment is $500. Great. So now you're paying, 15, 20% interest rate. But
Oh
you,
my
you, you
God.
have no clue. You want the car.
That's all that matters.
Right? And you want the payment. So the payment, I'm comfortable doing that. Now you've had this vehicle for, back in the day was what, 5 years? I think now they go up to 84 months, which is crazy. But so for 5 years, now this car, I only have it for, 2 or 3 years before this thing starts breaking down. So now it's like, hey, we have that mentality. We want everything new. I'm getting ready to trade this thing in. So now the balance that you owe on that vehicle is going to be tacked on to this other vehicle. So you're just in this dreadful cycle, and we had to be aware of it to get angry to make the change. So I guess that was a blessing. Thank goodness that happened to make me say, hey, here's what we're going to start doing in terms of our finances. And I think that's what a lot of folks need to do. And some of them just aren't aware.
That you make so many great points, and I see myself, especially going through my journey, where you're just banging your head against the wall when it comes to certain financial decisions.
Yeah.
I can't lie to you. The first car I financed was a Chrysler 300, and
The Bentley.
Until one pulls up next to you, right? So that interest rate was like 24%.
Yeah, man.
And this was 12, 13 years ago.
Sure.
So this was like right when I finished college.
Yeah.
And I just had to have it, right?
Yep.
I just had to have it. But going through that process, I said never again.
Yep.
And that's how I started on this journey. But now we're thinking about credit, and now we're thinking about purchasing a home.
Yeah.
So let's start there. So from your perspective, what's one of the first things you should do before you start looking for a house or you want to buy a house?
It's a great question. Here's what we tell everybody. The one thing that you want to know, which is going to be amazing to you, but you want to know your numbers. That's the first thing. And the numbers are, what do you make per hour? What's your hourly rate? How many hours do you work? And the reason that's important is because if you're aware of, your money first, that's going to trickle down to everything else. And I'm sure you've heard this, right? The way you do anything is the way you do everything. So, so let's start off with, if you make $16 an hour, not $15.90, not $16.20, you need to know exactly what you make and how many hours you work per week. Because when you do that, that's easy math, right? But if you have variable income, let's say you're making $16 an hour, but you're working 35, 37, 40 hours, that's a little different. So now we have to calculate your income a different way. So to answer your question, the first thing you want to know is your numbers. What's your exact salary, what you're making per hour, and if you're an hourly employee, how many hours do you work per week? And then once we know that, now you want to have an idea of what type of budget, what do I want to spend per month, right? What do I want to spend per month? And once you have that idea, now we need to figure out what area do you want to live in? Because each area is going to be different in terms of the property tax calculation, right? So you might want to pay $700, but you want to be in Cleveland Heights, but because the property taxes are so high in that area, you can't go to Cleveland Heights. You may have to go to Euclid or Cleveland or Maple or Bedford. So those two are really, really important. And the third one, which is one of my absolute favorites, be okay with the word no. No doesn't mean never. It should be a motivator for you to say, hey, Samir created, or our team created this plan for us or this play. Now I'm going to run this play out so I can get my credit to this level. Now I'm ready to, purchase a home. But those would be the three. Know your numbers, have a budget in mind, and be okay with the word no, especially if you're having some type of credit challenges.
So when you say no, what are you referring to? Like no, saying you can't get approved for a house right now, or you can't get approved for the house that you want? Can you expand on that?
Yeah. I would say if let's say you're trying to figure out if you are ready, but we're taking a look at your current situation and you're not ready. It's like, hey, no, not right now. Here are some things that you need to take care of before you can take that step. You may have number one and number two, right? I know my numbers, I know my budget, But number three, we don't have these things together to put together a full approval for you.
So let's talk about credit scores.
Okay.
And I was reading somewhere like the minimum you can get approved for is like a 580.
Yeah.
Is that a thing? Or talk to me. Tell me what's going on.
That's a great question. Actually, FHA, which is the Federal Housing Administration, they'll do a credit score as low as 550. Yeah, you have to have 10% down, but those terms aren't going to be as favorable, right?
I bet.
Yeah, so let's talk about your traditional FHA. So let's say you have some decent credit, and let's say respectable. Respectable credit is about a 620, respectable.
Okay.
And FHA, well, in the mortgage world, and FHA only requires a 3.5% down payment. If you had a 550 score, they require a 10% down payment. So if we're using $100,000 as our example, 10 grand if you have a 550 score, and 3,500 if you have a 620 score. So our team, and what we talk about a lot to potential home buyers, is if you have a 550 and you're going to put $10,000 down on that home, why don't we figure out what's going on with your credit? You can take those funds and kind of correct your credit, pay off some past bills. Now you're ready. We can get you to a respectable level. Now you can pay 3.5% for your down payment. So it's kind of like that, what we talked about, the analogy about the vehicles. I want what I want. So some people may say, no, I don't, I don't care. I got a 550, I'm going to put my 10% down, and that customer is not really the one for us, because we're not about transactions. We're about relationships.
Yep.
And helping you build so you can, teach your children, and your children's children can understand, like, hey, this is the right way to do it. I was taught when I got in contact with Samir and our team. Now my life is so much better because of those conversations.
That is so crazy, because I can see myself back right when I graduated college,
Sure.
just saying I want what I want.
Yeah.
I just wanted to go back to the dorms and just stun on people.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to do. That's all I wanted
Yeah,
to do.
yeah.
But in reality, I'm happy that my car payments, and I'm happy the term wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
To where I can easily get out of it, but it sparked something. So at that time, my score was like in the low fives.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what, I can't do this.
Yeah.
So I started to go through my credit reports. And at that time, you would get one free from annualcreditreport.com.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned the Fair Credit Reporting Act, the Fair Debt Protection Act, like the back of my hand. And that's how I got into finance.
Okay.
And I've been doing credit repair, 12 years now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be 12 years this summer.
Oh, wow.
And that's how I got into like the finance space, because I wasn't really into finance.
Yeah.
Especially from a college perspective, because it was more corporate. But personal finance is totally different.
Sure.
And it's like, I found my passion and why am I here?
Yeah.
But I totally understand it's the mindset of people that sometimes you just got to knock your head against the wall to understand, but some people just stay in that cycle which is scary.
You got to get angry. And, my moment was, my wife. We were young. My son was in, I can't remember what grade he was in, maybe 3rd or 4th grade or something. And he needed a trumpet or something. So my wife had to do something credit-wise. She came in, she was very upset. She was like, hey, I'm tired of this. My credit is X, Y, and my credit was similar, right? Probably somewhere in the 5s. And I remember that day vividly. That's when we made the change and said, okay, you know what? It's just something about your wife getting upset, right?
She got to have what she wants, man.
Yeah, man. So, she's the one who, she was the driving factor of us, purchasing our house and, doing all of those things. So, once she really got upset, a light bulb went off on my head and said, hey, here's what we're doing. And
absolutely right.
Yeah.
As we should, right?
Sure.
As we should. Okay. So let's say we have our scores. Let's say we're in the mid 600s.
Okay.
We checked our numbers. We went to the kitchen table. We wrote it down. Or they talked to Jason, because I'm a financial planner, and we figured out what they can afford.
Okay.
And shameless plug. And then now, are we in the pre-approval stage? And if we are, walk us through what does that look like on your end?
Okay. So when we're in the pre-approval stage, we're going to do some of those things that we talked about before. We're going to revisit that, right? We're going to talk about, your payment, because now you've done the work. We just reverse engineered, right? You got your credit together first. Now we're going to work backwards. So now we're going to talk about again, hey, we have your credit together. What do you want to spend per month? What area you want to be in? Now we're going to put together some numbers. Okay, so you want to be in Euclid, Ohio, for an example. At that level of $700, you can get a home hypothetically for $125,000, and we're going through all the numbers, right? So here's your interest rate. This is what range your interest rate would be in. Here's your principal and interest payment. Also, Mrs. Jones, there's other things that are included in your payment, such as taxes, homeowner's insurance, PMI, private mortgage insurance, and we break all of those things down, and we even go further to explain what's going on. Do you understand what escrow is? Do you know that your taxes and your insurance will be included in your payment? And we talk about those definitions and what it means. So once we have an understanding there, now we go to the next step, which is connecting them with a realtor. And once we connect them with a realtor, we're trying to explain to them what the process is going to look like. So you're approved for $125,000. We talk about some of the things that the seller can contribute, towards your closing costs. And from there, we talk about some of the other next steps. There's an appraisal that you have to get for the property.
Before we get that far,
Okay.
I don't want to stop it because I know we can go on forever. But you said a few things that I want to highlight. You said PMI.
Yeah.
Can you explain to us what the private mortgage insurance is?
Sure. I'm going to do it in two ways.
Okay, lay it on.
Maybe two definitions. So private mortgage insurance simply protects the lender's interests. So if private mortgage insurance didn't exist, everybody in America would just come to the closing table with a 20% down payment, right? So for FHA, which is the Federal Housing Administration, they include private mortgage insurance on every loan because it protects not only the lender's interests, but FHA is a government insured program, so it's going to protect FHA's interests as well.
Okay. Well put. Escrow. You mentioned that as well. Explain to us what escrow is.
Okay. So escrow, we're going to talk about FHA. Well, here are the programs too, Jason. So you have USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, FHA, Federal Housing Administration. You have conventional, which is Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. And then you also have VA, which is the Veterans Administration. So all of those programs except for conventional, if you're putting down 20%, you don't have to escrow. But the other government programs, VA, USDA, and FHA, you have to escrow. And what escrow is, let's say if our total payment is $700 and $75 of that is going towards our homeowner's insurance, and $125 is going towards property taxes. So let's say our total payment is $700. So now $75 is going to go into what's called an escrow account every month when you make your payment. So when your insurance is due and payable next year, they're going to take that money from your escrow account and pay your insurance, and then they're going to pay your taxes. So another definition of escrow, let's say all the government programs came out and said, you know what, screw it. We're not going to let anybody escrow, let them do it on their own. What that means is for the next 30 years, once a year, you come up with a lump sum to pay your homeowner's insurance and your taxes every year for the next 3 decades. So since that's escrowed in your payment, you don't have to worry about that. So you're not paying $700 plus homeowner's insurance plus property taxes.
So I think that's great. I do that. It's something, one less bill I have to worry about.
Sure.
But what's the meaning behind that? Is it so you won't get behind on your interest and your taxes? I'm not sure. I'm sorry. With your taxes and insurance, or is there like an underlying reason why?
Yeah, for sure. I would say that's one for sure. So if you're coming up with a tax bill, let's say Euclid's, property taxes are $3,300. I don't know why I keep saying Euclid. Maybe I have an affinity towards Euclid. I don't know. But we lived in Euclid for a while.
Okay.
But let's say $3,300. So you have to come up with 3,300 once a year for the next 30 years, right? Because your mortgage is going to be amortized most of the time for about a 30-year period. So the lender is saying, hey, I mean, I have interest in this property. I need to make sure that these property taxes and insurance are going to be paid. Because if something happens in the home, let's say, what are you going to do? Walk away? We have, interest in this house. And then property taxes, if you're not paying your property taxes, you can get a tax foreclosure. So the county can come and say, hey, you're not paying your taxes. We're going to foreclose, on your home. So the lenders understand that, and that's why they make it mandatory in almost every case except for conventional that you do escrow.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. I just wanted to make sure we address it.
No, that's a great question.
It can go over. When I first bought my first house,
Yeah.
it was the same. I'm like, what is this? And then they explained it, and I said, oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
It's one less bill I have to worry about. And I mean, just being the man of the house and being the breadwinner, I think it's important that you understand what that is.
Sure.
And ensure that it's being taken care of.
Yeah.
Now, there are times I remember where the amount that was in escrow didn't cover the taxes because the taxes increased.
Sure.
Is that common, or was that just like a clerical error or just like a one-off?
I think both. Mistakes happen, in every industry. It doesn't happen often, but I mean, your taxes, yeah, I mean, they definitely can go up. There's a levy that might get passed at the school year for certain programs, and
Every year.
yeah, and it kind of stinks sometimes too, because that thing passed and now you're a little short in your escrow because we were only putting, as our example, $125 every month that you make that monthly payment, but now the taxes went up by $50. So now you're a little short in your escrow, and your payment increases just a little bit.
Yeah, you're about 600 short, so
exactly.
you got it. Yep, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you just don't, you put it in the back of your mind, and then you get that statement from the bank, and the bank says, well, your payments are going up.
Yeah.
You're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And then you call and you get a life lesson. But
I like that too, though. But I like when the levies pass, because if you're about community, right? So most often you're trying to purchase a home, you want to be in a better, area. And if you're lucky enough to have a family and have children, you're thinking about the school system, right? And
Big
a lot of
time.
those levies, a ton of them are based on, school and programs. And I think all that stuff is needed. A small price to pay, for a good community and a good school, I think.
And I think absolutely, because if you're in a good community and a good school, naturally the value of your home goes up
Absolutely.
because people want to live there now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a trade-off.
Yeah.
It's an investment into the schools.
Yes.
It certainly is. Okay, so we got our credit together. We're straight there. We're going to put 3.5 down. We're okay there. We got with a realtor, found a house. So after we found our home, what's next?
Okay. So I'm gonna go back just for a quick second. So
Okay.
So conventional, there's a program where you can put down 3%. So it's called a Home Ready program and a Home Possible, but they have income restrictions. So I think the median income in Cuyahoga County is like, I don't know, 61,000, I believe. So if you exceed that and you wanted to go conventional, then we have to go the normal route. The minimum down payment for conventional is 5%, and the minimum down payment for FHA is 3.5%. So we will use your example though of FHA. So I have my approval, I got my credit together, I'm connected with the realtor. Now you're throwing your hat in the ring. So now you're out here with the realtor. This realtor is gonna ask you some questions about specifics. What area do you wanna be in? Are you looking for a bi-level, colonial, ranch, all that stuff?
The fun part.
Yeah, the fun part. And then more often than not, they're going to send you an email with, things that meet your criteria or put you in their MLS system. And then if they're like most folks, you're going to see some of those homes. You're going to scroll through some of the pictures. And I'm old school. I might get in my car and, ride around.
Absolutely.
Right. Look at the outside of that house. And then if you like what you see, that's when you contact them back and say, hey, I love X, Y, and Z. Can we make an appointment to see the inside of the home? So that's when that process really starts to go. So let's say if you liked X house and you're ready to make an offer, it's like, hey, Samir, I think I found the one. We'll jump on a quick call just to do the numbers because you may be in a different area and the property taxes are a little different in every area, right? So we'll do the numbers again just to make sure the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. And then, hey, you're good to go. And then they'll go ahead and place the offer with the realtor. And there's two types of agents or realtors. You have the buying agent, which represents the buyer. And then you have the listing agent, which represents the seller. So when you're riding around in your car and you see those signs in the yard that say for sale, that's the listing agent. They represent the seller's interests. So what the buying agent is going to do, they're going to be a liaison between you, the listing agent, and the seller, and they're going to be putting those offers in, on your behalf, so you don't have to do those things.
Perfect.
Yep.
That is perfect. So the buying agent, you're not paying. So I'm not going to get there, not that far. So now we have the house and everything is intact. So now we come back to you for the process to get to the closing, right?
Yep.
So during this process, they ask a lot of information.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of information.
Yeah, man.
So during this process, they're asking all this stuff, right? And why? I've always been like interested in the why. Like, why do they ask for so much stuff?
That's a great question. And we get that a lot. Like, man, hey, I gave you this or I gave you that, and it's like, hey, I get it, but but the underwriter wants to make sure that everything you told us in the very beginning, and then everything that we told them, lines up prior to closing. Saying, hey, Samir, you know what? Everything checks off. Everything matches. My income matches. My job time, matches. I don't have any gaps in my employment. I do have my down payment money, and I can prove where that money came from. Great. My debt to income ratio is in line, which is the amount of debt that you have, versus your liabilities. So all that stuff is in line. Now the underwriter, that's the person that really is the quarterback of this whole thing.
I was going to ask you the role of the underwriter.
Yeah. So the underwriter, and I think I did a reference in one of our March Madness videos. We call it the referee was the underwriter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They can give you the technical files, throw you out the game, all that stuff. But yeah, pretty much, man. They just want to make sure, and that's why we're so thorough in the beginning, because if you're going to give us all the information up front, it's going to be a smooth process. But if things pop up during the process because you weren't really that transparent, or you weren't organized and you didn't know your numbers, that's how those things kind of pop up, right? But the role of the underwriter is to cross the T's, dot the I's, making sure everything aligns up so they can sign off and say, hey, Samir, something looks a little funny. I saw, their bank statements and, here's something that's in here. But normally we would catch that before it gets to the underwriter anyway.
So who does the underwriter work for? Does the underwriter work for you? Does he work for like a third party?
That's a great question, because you have what you call some lenders, and then you have us, which we're mortgage brokers. So what we do, we actually broker someone's file out to, we can work with maybe 150 lenders if we wanted to.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's the advantage of working with us, because we can say, hey, Jason is a good candidate to purchase a home. He's a great candidate, but he went to his bank, and the bank, they have clear-cut guidelines. There is no gray area, so he couldn't get approved. But guess what? He came to us, and because he's a good candidate, we set him up with such and such lender, and now he's able to be approvable, and then that underwriter is going to work for that lender.
That makes perfect sense, because I'm just thinking if I went to bank, I'm not going to say a bank's name, but went to bank A, and their guidelines, you got to have a 760, you got to put 5% down, this and that, and you're like, oh, that's not me.
Right.
But you already burnt an inquiry on your credit, so now you're feeling defeated.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't want to do this, and you didn't even get started yet. But going to a broker, you can pull someone's credit profile and say, okay, here's where we are. I know bank A or bank C or bank D will be a good candidate for this person in their present state.
Exactly.
Is that how?
That's exactly how it works too. And so folks aren't confused. Remember back in the day, and I don't know if they probably still do that. When you go to the car dealership, they just run your credit through 150.
If you got bad credit, yeah.
Yeah, they run your stuff. So see, I had bad credit before, right?
I had to.
So they run your stuff through 150 lenders, and they come out. Guess what? You know, we found a bank that can do your stuff at 30% interest rate.
At least.
But that's not what we do. Obviously, we have some good relationships with lenders, and we're going to know from your profile, hey, this person right here fits the criteria for, you know, this lender, this bank. This is where we're going to go with this lender. So that's really the advantage of coming to us versus, you know, a bank. You know, if you fit their bucket, thumbs up. If you don't, hey, you know, you're out of there. There's not a lot of wiggle room there if you don't fit their criteria or their overlays is what they call it.
Have you seen, you know, guidelines become more restricted since like post-COVID? Or is it a good mix? Or
well, during COVID, sure, yeah, it was tough during COVID. I think for everybody, just because no one knew what was going on. We never had a pandemic before, right?
Yeah.
So everybody was making adjustments on the fly, including me and you, because I heard some of your stories earlier.
Yeah, absolutely.
But a lot of those restrictions they really don't even exist anymore. And I would say the main restriction they had was on self-employed folks, because self-employed folks were affected the most, right? Yeah, they were really affected, and they really put it to them. But they just ended that probably, you know, I think the fourth quarter of last year.
Okay.
Yep.
So one question I do want to ask, these interest rates on houses, oh my God. Wait, before we get there, we're not even through the entire process. Wait a minute. So, okay, the underwriter talks to the bank. And
well, they work for the bank.
They work for the bank. Yep. So now the underwriter is giving you the green light. Now we're getting ready to close. So what happens when we go to the closing table? Because there's like maybe like 1,000 pages you have to sign.
Yeah.
So what happens when we get to the closing?
All right, let's talk about that too. And then I don't want to say bank. You know, they work for the lender.
I'm sorry,
right?
The lender.
So they work for the lender. The underwriter does, but. You know, once you get to closing, you have a lot of papers that you signed initially, maybe plus or minus, you know, 10 or 15 more documents. And those documents are just, you know, legal speak about, you know, your property, when you should be taking ownership. Are you going to have this as your primary residence? Don't commit loan fraud, you know, things of that nature. Mm-hmm. But, you know, once you get to closing, everything should match from, you know, what we spoke about in the very beginning. So prior to you getting to closing, we're going to call you within about 48 hours, tell you the funds that you need to bring to closing. And again, that should match with what we talked about in the very beginning. Then when we started the process, and at the end, everything always matches up. So closing back in the day used to be some type of, like, I don't know, what am I going to do? I mean, how much am I coming to the table with? That stuff doesn't even exist anymore, because we have what's called a CD, or a closing disclosure, that's always sent to the borrower, you know, prior to closing. So they have time to review that. Yep, the numbers look right. They're pretty much identical to what, you know, Samir and his team told us. And then you go to closing and it's like, yeah, everything matches up, and, you know, you're pretty much good to go.
We're good to go. So I think there's a step that we missed. It's probably a few. No, I know home inspections.
Okay.
Who pays for that?
The borrower or you. So we're going to say that I'm the borrower. You're the borrower, so you're going to pay for that home inspection. So let's back up just for a second for a reference point. So now you're in contract. Now you're going to have in there that this contract is contingent upon a satisfactory home inspection. That's what I see generally.
Okay.
And, you know, once you get your home inspection, the inspector is going to come in and they're going to look at every nook and cranny of that house just to make sure you're getting a great buy before you go to the next step, which is that appraisal. Because no, it doesn't make any sense, in my opinion, to pay for an appraisal if your inspector is saying, hey, this house is not good. Right.
Right.
So that's what you do. You're in contract, you get your home inspection. If your home inspection is good, then you're going to go with that appraisal to verify that I'm buying this home for $125,000. The appraisal is going to confirm that it's worth $125,000. Yep.
Makes perfect sense. Okay. How can we get in contact with you?
Oh, great question. You can call me at the office. You can follow us on Instagram at CFG Ohio. I'm on LinkedIn, Samir Rashed, and our number is, on our IG page, but I'll give it here. It's 440-627-6102. And any of our team members will be happy to help, at any time. And it doesn't cost anything to, call us to talk about, your journey. Because that's what happened to me when I got in the business. Mm-hmm. When I first purchased my house, I met a real estate agent, and he said, "Hey man, it doesn't work like that. Why don't you come on in and let's sit down and let's have a chit chat. Let's talk." So we talked about our goals and our life and where we wanted to be, and he made us feel, really comfortable. And I felt, and my wife felt at the same time too, that that's one thing that we should incorporate in our business. So if someone's contacting us, it's no charge to sit down and have a conversation and consult with you.
Absolutely. I don't believe in paid consultations.
Yeah.
It costs me nothing to have a conversation with you about, like your finances or whatever you're trying to do. And so I think that's great. And I think it can kind of be a lost art. It's going to fall into a lost art, but sometimes people take advantage of it. There's always the bad, but
Sure.
I think it's just remembering your why. So
yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. And then they can also follow us on or go to our webpage. It's cfgohio.com.
Okay. And this is Slice of Pie, and this is about personal finance, and we all are human. So here's a curveball question for you.
I like that.
What's one of your vices, a financial vice, something that you love doing, but it's like, I really shouldn't be doing it, or purchase?
Personally, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Personally, man.
Let me go first?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay, I'll go first. Mine is Poshmark. So last August I got LASIK.
Oh, really?
So yeah, my wife just said, "Dude, I was scared."
Yeah, I'm sure.
I tried to run out of the surgery.
Did you really?
It was full of women, and they said, "No, you're going to man up and do it." So the woman wouldn't let me go. It was crazy, but it was over in like 2 minutes.
Really?
Yeah, I'm like, "Oh, this was nothing." They're like, "Dude, you were scared." So Poshmark, I love designer frames, sunglasses, but not like really, really designer, but like Ray-Bans.
Yeah.
So I buy them off of Poshmark, and I get them from Avalon Exchange, and I get them from Plato's Closet. So that's like my vice, and I have so many pairs of sunglasses. And I'm like, dude, you should stop buying these. But they're like $60, $70. So it's one of those things where you can really get caught up, because you can make a $30 purchase, a $60 purchase, an $80 purchase. But in time, you see that credit card bill, and you're like, bruh. But that's one of mine. I said one. It's Poshmark with designer frames.
I would say mine is, which is really crazy, and if my wife was here, she'd be like, "Yep, that's him." It's just buying books on Amazon.
Okay.
And you know how they have the area in Amazon where you can go get a used book or something? No, I'm getting a new book. Even if it's $29, I know I can save like $15. I gotta have the new book. I don't know why.
Oh, so you won't buy it used?
No.
Okay. You can buy used books?
Yeah, you can buy used books on Amazon. Yep. So I'll buy the new books, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, you mentioned your wife earlier on too, but my wife is my partner. Her name is Darlene. She's a partner in the business. She's awesome. She keeps everything going. I have my daughter. She's our processor.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So my wife's name is Darlene. My daughter is Destiny. She's been there for about 6 years. So I have two phenomenal women that keep me on track, right? So I can't, they keep me together, keep me structured.
Right on. My wife just tells me what to do.
Right, exactly.
No, she's amazing. She is, but she's pretty bossy. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need that.
So, absolutely. So final tip from you, if you want to buy a home, what's one last impression you want to leave for everyone?
I would say, why not? Why not you? You can buy a home. You have to have some discipline, and feel free to reach out to us because we'll be more than happy to set up some plays for you to structure you where you can purchase a home. But my tip is to have that mindset of why not? Why not me? I can purchase a home if I get with somebody who can actually show me exactly what I need to do. And myself, my wife, we're those people for you. So reach out to us and start having that mentality if you are lucky enough to listen to this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And please follow him on Instagram. He drops so much knowledge.
Thanks,
March
Jason.
Madness was amazing. I'm reading this like, oh my God, this is so fire.
Thank you.
You are very welcome. Well, thank you. And one final tip from us over at Slice of Pie. We really appreciate everyone viewing this. A final tip from me as the owner of the Breadwinners: please plan ahead. I don't care if it's 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. Before you are even ready to do that, make sure you check all of your financials, like Samir said, so when you are ready, it can be a smooth process.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And appreciate you having me on your platform, man. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure.
All right.
All right, brother.
All right, man.